SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Hi, this is Dr. Andy Barlow with the Chiropractic Physician Center of Tupelo and author of the #1 best-selling book, The Code Breaker. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Then call my office at 662-844-1414 and order my new book, The Code Breaker.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino, who is back in the SuperTalk Mississippi studios. I am down at the beautiful Mississippi Trade Mart. That would be on account of the Mississippi Farm Bureau's 100-year anniversary, 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. And it is a pleasure to be here. Rhino, they got this place all decked out. This Trade Mart is awesome, and Farm Bureau is really going to great lengths to make this a huge, fun celebration. The exhibitors all set up here in the big hall. And the first thing that caught my attention, Rhino, is this giant John Deere piece of equipment. It's got so many attachments on it, I'm not actually sure what it does. I may have to send you a photo. And, of course, we got Mike McCormick coming on in the program, the president of Farm Bureau. He'll probably be able to fill us in as well. But it is a gorgeous
Friday, y'all.
It sure is. It's beautiful outside. The temperature a little toastier here inside than it was a couple of days ago. This front has moved through, cleared things out. What do we got? Like expecting highs in the low 70s today, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Which, yeah, just delightful. Pretty much blue skies overhead, a few passing cirrus clouds at high altitude. You sound a lot better today.
I'm working on it. I feel about the same as I did yesterday, but I have a little bit more of a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, glad to hear that. Glad to know it. Won't trouble you too much. But, of course, always want you to chime in, weigh in. The audience out there, folks, if you're in the area of the Mississippi Trade Mart, come on by and see us. We're right here in the corridor. When you enter the main doors, take a right. You can't miss the Element Well Studios set up in the corridor facing Trade Hall B, the doors to Trade Hall B. But they're getting it all set up here and got lots of events and activities scheduled throughout the weekend. We'll get an update on that from Mike McCormick, the president of Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Joining us at 10:37 today, Congressman Michael Guest. That should be an interesting conversation as the new Congress is just a month or so away from being seated. Everybody will get sworn in. Looking forward to that. We'll get his take, his expectation for the next Congress, the next couple of years. Sally Doty, the director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility, also known as BEAM, B-E-A-M, the acronym. Of course, Sally, former state senator from Lincoln County. And then Vince Mangold, he is in the Mississippi House of Representatives, represents District 53, which includes Franklin, Jefferson, Davis, Lawrence, Lincoln, and Pike counties. He's the vice chair of the Agriculture Committee. Carrie New, the director of marketing for Wade Inc. At 11:50, we'll wrap up the day at 12:37 as far as guests are concerned with Andy Berry, the president of the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association. So, looking forward to a big day with lots of great interviews and guests and information. A report yesterday, I shared that I was headed after the show to a signing ceremony from one of my old baseball players. Well, not old as in a few years ago, and in a baseball career 4 or 5 years ago seems like a long time. But what a lot of fun that was, Rhino, out at Madison Central High School. He and his family present, his teammates, his coaches. What a great day. It's so exciting, and to see a player advance to the next level. Will be interested to tracking him in the next phase of his career. Just a fine young man from a great Christian family. And what just a great setting, the way they did that, and see his players and coaches there all celebrating. Obviously, they played really good baseball out there at Madison Central. Great squad, and lots of other players headed to continue their baseball career at the college level as well. So that was a lot of fun. Lots of news breaking, as there always is these days, overnight. One thing that caught my attention is that the United States Supreme Court has said that it will hear the arguments from the government, from the Biden administration, where they are pushing to forgive student loans. So at this point, lower federal courts have said, President Biden, you can't just with your signature on an executive order forgive some $400 billion of student loans. I actually think it's more than that, but that's what they're saying, and that's the number they're using in the court. But the upper court, the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court, said, you know what, we're going to honor that halt, the hold issued on the forgiveness by the lower court, but we are going to allow the government to argue its case in front of the Supreme Court, and that is scheduled to occur in February of next year. So in the meantime, it's blocked. This is crazy to me that we're even having this discussion, that the president is going, think about that, to the Supreme Court to get the court to side with them on their authority with the stroke of a pen to just wipe out $400 billion of debt. That's insane. And, of course, the details of the plan include up to $20,000 in loan relief for low- and middle-income individuals. About 26 million people have already applied because recall that even though the lower court, the federal courts, said, no, that's not allowed, that's not lawful for the president just to unilaterally, if you will, forgive these loans. The administration continued to encourage those eligible for forgiveness to go to the website and sign up. And remember, Rhino, when they first published that site, it crashed because it couldn't handle all the traffic of all those folks that wanted to get on there first and apply for that student loan forgiveness. Really is incredible. And anytime, we've said so many times, any situation where you see big government money, you always see big waste, fraud, and abuse. Now the IRS is reporting having processed a number of and in receipt of a number of returns for the year 2021 and 2020, that some 19,000, this is insane, some 19,000 people in this country that earned more than $1 million over that period also applied for and received unemployment assistance. That's right. About $250 million of taxpayer money was sent out the door to folks who make more than $1 million a year who applied for unemployment. What's called the EUA, remember that, the Enhanced Unemployment Assistance from the federal government that's layered on with that which states provide. Unemployment is a state program, and you apply it with the various agencies charged with that, administering unemployment benefits. And but during COVID, of course, as part of the CARES Act, and then bumped up again, extended more with the Biden American Rescue Plan. One just simply applies for the benefits, and they receive both the state benefits. In Mississippi, it's not a whole lot of money, as I recall, Rhino, $250 a week, it seems to come to mind, but additional $300 or $600, depending on which tranche, from the federal government per week. So some 19,000 millionaires, including like 500, as I recall, that made more than $10 million, that also received unemployment benefits from the federal government. Mike in Gulfport on the C Spire text line says that student loan Biden declaration is and never was anything but the biggest vote buying scheme ever. I agree with you, Mike, but it worked. See, that's the problem. We certainly are right, I think, in denouncing it, in condemning the action, but the fact is it worked. It drew out an outsized number of Generation Z voters, which typically don't vote and then aren't included in the polls, but the exit polls showed they came out in droves and voted some 65% in favor of Democrats, and they all said student loan and reproductive rights were the reasons that they voted Democrats. That's what got their attention. So you have to say, from a political perspective, pretty clever on the part of the Democrats. They're absolutely just really winning, I think, at the ballot box with their crazy narratives going on. It's time for a break here. The Element Wealth Studios down at the Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Coming up next, Mike McCormick, the president of the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Stay with us.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midday Super Talk Mississippi, live at the Mississippi Trade Mart today for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. And joining us now, Mr. Mike McCormick, the president of the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Mike, good to have you. Always good to see you, sir.
Glad to be here. Times.
Yes, sir. So I did a little walk through the big trade halls, and the exhibitors are getting everything all set up. It's got to be exciting. 100 years. Incredible milestone. Anything that endures for that long a period of time, got to be doing something right.
Well, and it's got such an important mission as well, right? So agriculture is Mississippi's number one industry, and before we got started with this in 1922, we were the number one industry in the state, but the farmers didn't have a voice or a seat at the table. So we've been doing that for 100 years, and it's just getting bigger and better and stronger all the time.
So, Mike, in your tenure in this role, and I know you've been in the farming industry; it's in your blood all your life. What sticks out as what has changed, let's say, in the last 20 years or so, or just through your career, that comes to mind that says, that really was revelational to the industry?
Well, I think the technology that we're having today is just amazing, and it's moving at such a rapid pace that you never know what the future is going to unfold. But right now, some of the stuff that we're looking at in the trade show out there is just amazing machinery.
It's incredible. So I talked about it on the show a couple of days ago. I caught an interview on the Business Channel. And it was at an event for agribusiness. I'm not exactly sure where it was, but they were speaking with the chief information officer of John Deere. And he was laying out the vision for that company, of course, a great American company that has served farmers and revolutionized the farming industry, honestly, with their inventions. But hearing his vision to transitioning almost to total autonomous farm implements and farm machinery. And what really caught my attention is when he said, with this we could literally work on the farm, or these machines could 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Well, I don't know that we have any other choice but to move in that direction because of the labor market.
Right.
Farmers just can't find people to work on the farm anymore. So being able to do what you're talking about, and I have farmers that run a lot of equipment and sit in their trucks and can watch it in the field. You don't have to wonder if it's working, if something's broken down or something's not working right. You can see it right there on your laptop from your truck.
So do you believe that all of that technology has really enabled farmers to control costs but produce greater yield? So that's the goal.
Well, that's it, and that's why we lead the world in production agriculture, because we can do all these wonderful things. We have all of these great companies here that are innovative and scientists that are working at our land grants and giving us this competitive edge. But if you look through that door right there, you're going to see the latest and the greatest. That's John Deere's See & Spray machine, and that's what all the farmers are talking about. It's got the capability of cutting their chemical costs back, applications by 80%.
Wow. It's an incredibly beautiful piece of machine, the workmanship, and you just know lots of engineering, lots of technology behind the scenes. All right, so let's talk about the proceedings for the weekend. I just looking through the brochure here. It's absolutely jam-packed with activities, and you've got big-time entertainment coming in as well. Tell us what's happening.
So this afternoon, we have joined forces with the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association. They're going to start today and tonight and finish up tomorrow around lunchtime, and then we're going to pick up there about 2 or 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon with our first general session of Farm Bureau activities. But while all of that's going on, we got this wonderful trade show out here that we want to invite all the farmers in the state. You don't have to be a row crop farmer. They're going to have John Deere hay baling equipment in there and having hay baling demonstrations and a lot of other wonderful groups in there that's helped sponsor this thing. We want to come out and support those that are supporting us in agriculture. While all that's going on, we've got our Farm Bureau livestock show going on out in the livestock barns. All the show people, the FFA and 4-H kids will be out there. You need to come out and support your county and your kids that are doing that. They're the hardest working young people that you'll ever want to meet. Then we will move into a concert that we're sponsoring tomorrow night, the Trace Atkins lineup, and it's going to be wonderful. That's a ticketed event. There's a few tickets left. I think you can go online and get those. On Sunday, we will be back over here at the Trademark. Most all of this is going to happen here. And at 2 o'clock on Sunday is our big general session. All the statewide officials are going to be here speaking, and federal officials as well. And then Mike Huckabee is going to be our keynote speaker. I think everybody will want to come hear him. So y'all come on down and come through the trade show, go visit the livestock barns, and come hang out with us.
That's awesome. Mike, how would you assess the health of the agriculture industry in the state of Mississippi and in the nation in general at this time?
Well, I think it's in a state of change. Inflation is hitting our farmers like harder than ever before. The input costs are up just for this 1 year, 25%, 50% on diesel and chemicals and fertilizer, even more than that in some instances. So we are receiving a little more for our commodities, but not enough to offset all the inflation on everything that we're using. So, but overall, I think the future is bright. We've got to feed this planet, and we can do that here in the United States. We can do it here in Mississippi better than anywhere else on the planet.
It's incredible. And farmers, Mike, it always seems to me like though they somewhat compete, they're competitors, there's also a brotherhood, a bond amongst farmers as well, is there not?
It is, and that's the wonderful thing about Farm Bureau. When we started this 100 years ago, what we found and what we call the Farm Bureau family are all of our members, all of our boards across the state that meet. We just become family, and it's a place where a poultry producer, a contract chicken grower can become best friends with a row crop farmer from up in the Delta, and we just have a brotherhood that's probably unlike any other industry.
Yeah, it's incredible. So what about the government? And and the government always issuing regulations, it seems, and to some extent now the farming community, because of so-called climate change, is now in the target of government. You're having to deal with this constantly.
Yes, and unfortunately, it's not just the government; it's corporate America that's passing along all this environmental rules and regulations for us that just doesn't make sense. Farmers are made to be the original conservationists. We're inside of us. We want to protect our land. We want to turn it over to the next generation better than what we found it. And the innovations like we're seeing, like I talked about the John Deere See & Spray machine that's going to cut back chemical applications by 80% possibly. Those are the things that we're driving towards, but we just don't get there fast enough. And these people that live and their whole lives on concrete streets and in high-rise buildings think that I'm out here poisoning the world when they have no idea what we're doing.
You're feeding them is what you're doing.
That's exactly right. They've never been hungry.
And clothing them as well.
That's
so,
right.
and I know lots of other uses for agricultural applications. And I know your organization is that voice. You're in constant contact with our state leaders, our Washington delegation as well.
Yes, constant, and they reach out to us and on just about every issue that impacts rural Mississippi and farmers to say, hey, what does Farm Bureau say about this particular issue? So it's easier for them. Farm Bureau is the best at grassroots. That's what we do the best. I have a county board in every county in the state and through every community's leadership there. So we want to know what the answer is to the questions that are being asked. We can get that very rapidly through our network. So they are in contact with us, and the good thing is they're so very supportive. Our congressional delegation, our state leadership, I couldn't be prouder to be able to be teammates with those guys.
Yeah, and we should point out our Ag Commissioner, Andy Gibson, is a huge job. Advocate and ambassador for the industry as well.
A great friend. I would guess Andy and I average talking twice a day on the telephone.
Wow.
Just in the off times of the year. So when the legislative session's going on, maybe a little more. But we've got a lot of good friends in the House and the Senate here in the state. The governor and the lieutenant governor and speaker have all been advocates for agriculture as well as our senators and representatives in Washington.
I mean, it's a critical part of our economy, still the biggest industry in our state, and we got to foster it and take care of it, make sure they got all they need for us to get out of the way and let them do what they do.
We're going to continue to do that for the next 100 years, and we're going to chart that course here this weekend.
That sounds great. Mike, good to see you, sir. Appreciate you coming on. Congratulations as well.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
You got it. Mike McCormick, the president of the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, has been our guest on Middays. We'll take a break right here from the LMOL studios, coming back with Congressman Michael Guest.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Oh, what an eye to love you, dear. Oh, what an eye to hold you near.
Welcome back, everyone. Midday SuperTalk Mississippi at the Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of faith, family, and Farm Bureau. Joining us now, Congressman Michael Guest. He represents, of course, Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman, morning, sir.
Good morning, Gerard. How are you today?
Doing fantastic. This Mississippi Trade Mart, I'm so glad that we took this project on, and kudos to all of those involved. Of course, Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson was integral in this effort. This is a fantastic facility, isn't it?
It really is. It is night and day from what the old trademark to what Andy's been able to build there, and that is going to continue to build momentum there on the fairgrounds, going to continue to help as we seek to revitalize downtown Jackson. So you've got things such as the Trade Mart and the Capitol Police and everything that we're seeing down there. It's just really going to be a boom for our capital city.
It's awesome. It's fun to come down here. Kind of dreaded it going to the old facility. It just aged, and we needed a new one, and we have it. And there's plenty of parking, and the roads are recently paved. So nice venue for an event like that for sure. So just checking on the results in the House of Representatives. All the reports I'm looking at still show we're at 220 to 213, so we still have 2 seats outstanding, but I believe those are expected to go Republicans, which would put us at 222, 213, 9-seat margin. Is that what you're seeing as well, what you're hearing?
Yeah, the last 2 uncalled seats are trending in Republicans' favor. While they've not been called yet, we do believe that both those seats will ultimately be in Republican control. So we'll have 222 seats, so 218 to have the majority. So that gives us really a 5-seat cushion there. We know that as we began the last 2 weeks, we've been going through amendments to our caucus rule packages. We finished those up this week. We've elected steering committee members from each of the regions throughout the country. The steering committee will begin meeting next week to populate committee chairmen. And then on January 3rd, of course, we will have the vote on the House floor to elect the next Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Is it your opinion, Congressman, that Kevin McCarthy is in good shape there? Are there a lot of reports that suggest he may not have the necessary votes? What do you think?
I think he is very close to having the votes that he needs. I think if the election were today, there may be a few members that would still not support McCarthy, but he is working very hard to build that coalition to 218. He's reaching out to the entire conference, whether it be the Freedom Caucus or some of the more moderate groups. He is wanting to include all members of the Republican caucus in what we intend to do when we take control in January. I hope that this is a one-vote speaker's election. It is possible that if no member gets 218, that there would be subsequent votes, and we know that Congress cannot conduct any official business until first we elect a speaker and adopt the rules package. And so the quicker we can do that, the quicker we can get to legislating, the quicker we can get to beginning to conduct these investigations and fulfill the promises that we've made to the American people.
Yeah. So, one of the things that came to mind, Congressman, is I remember, I don't remember which class it was. Maybe it was the last class, but when Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats were working on the rules, do you remember that one of those was the way you had to refer to the spouses of members? You couldn't, and their family members, you couldn't use the words brother and father and sister and wife and husband. Do you remember that? Am I right?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. They had a house rule that everything had to be gender neutral, so you no longer had chairman or chairwoman. It was chairperson. When you were introducing legislation, you couldn't refer to brothers and sisters. You had to refer to siblings. You couldn't refer to mom and dad. They had to be referred to as parents. Clearly, wokeness run amok. I can promise you that those will no longer be included in the Republican rule package that we will vote on January 3rd.
Is it true as well that what I've seen, that we're going to start every day in the House of Representatives there with a prayer and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? How novel.
Yes, we will do that, and Speaker, hopefully soon to be Speaker McCarthy has said that we will also start on January 3rd by reading the Constitution, to making sure that all members have had an opportunity to review the document that we pledge an oath to follow. And so I think those are all good things. Now, I will say that we have historically opened up with prayer and the pledge, but it will be in the rules package, and so that will now be required every day. It won't be optional. It'll be something that Congress will have to do every day as we start legislative business on behalf of the American public.
All right. So what do you see unfolding? Let's say you guys are sworn in. You take your oath. You're seated. You've got the rules package in place. You elect a speaker. From a legislative perspective, where do we go from there?
First thing that we'll do is we're going to vote to repeal the 87,000 IRS agents that the Democrats have legislated when they passed the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act. That was one of the ways they were able to get that bill passed is by offsetting the cost of that bill by beefing up the IRS agents substantially, which are going to really, the argument the Democrats were made is these people are only these new IRS agents are only going to be auditing people that make more than $400,000 or more, and that's just a complete fallacy. They're going to be seeking to audit all hardworking Americans, and that's the last thing we need is an army of IRS agents. This legislation would make the legislation the Democrats passed with the addition of those 87,000 IRS agents. They would be the largest law enforcement agency in the entire country, bigger than Customs Border Patrol, bigger than the FBI, bigger than ATF. And so when our largest law enforcement agency is not seeking to protect Americans but seeking to audit Americans, I just think that is wrong. And so that will be the first piece of legislation that we take up as a Congress. And then we'll begin addressing things as such as opening up our offshore, some of the offshore drilling, some of the natural lands, our natural parks, natural forests, to oil exploration, to try to make sure that we once again become energy independent, and then try to bring down some of the unnecessary spending that has driven up inflation.
Yeah. The White House, about the oil drilling, the White House continues to point fingers at the industry saying, you guys have all these permits, you're just not out there drilling, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. You could have a lease, you could even have a permit, but you also have to have right-of-way access to get to where you're drilling, and sometimes you drill a dry hole, and so that permit was of no value, and you still have a White House that keeps saying we're going to put the fossil fuels business out of business. It just seems to be that they're hiding behind that.
You're right. There's a fallacy in their argument that just because they have a lease that they should then drill everywhere where they have property leased from the federal government. And we know that the oil companies do a great deal of testing, exploration to make sure that if they are going to drill a well, that they have a likelihood that they're going to find oil or natural gas there. And so as they're doing some of their seismic testing to determine whether or not there's a probability of that. In many cases, a decision is made that we are unlikely to find oil or natural gas if we drill in a certain location. And so what the Biden administration is seeking to argue is that in every lease in which our oil companies or our energy companies have, that they should drill each and every one of those sites, and that's not economically feasible. And you also mentioned the fact that this White House wants to put traditional fossil fuels out of business. And so that makes it even more important for these energy companies to make sure that there is a likelihood of a return on their investment very quickly, because we know that this administration and the progressives within the Democrat Party are seeking every day to do away with fossil fuels that we have relied upon really over the last several hundred years.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. You know what I hope, Congressman, is that you guys can get some legislation, send it over to the Senate, get the Democrats on the record on that legislation, because that's probably the biggest contributor to inflation that's just ransacking the wallets of Americans. We got about 30 seconds left.
Yes, sir, and you're right. Energy cost and out-of-control government spending, which is the other thing that we as the Republican Party hope to be able to rein in next Congress, is to do something about the $31 trillion debt that we're facing. Yeah. We continue to add to that debt every day, and ultimately our children and grandchildren will have to pay that debt at some point in their lifetime.
It's so irresponsible. It's crazy. Congressman, always good to talk to you, sir. Appreciate you calling in today, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you some more. Give my regards to the family.
Yes, sir. Thank you. See you soon, Gerard.
Yeah, man. Congressman Michael Guest has been our guest here on Middays. We'll step aside for a break. We've got another segment in this hour, and then Super Talk News, Fox News, followed by Sally Doty, the director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility. Coming right back.
3.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. The Element Well Studios repositioned today to the beautiful Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. On the C Spire text line, dumb question, forgive me. No such thing as dumb questions, not a problem. Not enough coffee this morning, in parentheses. Can the Republican House pass a new bill killing the 87,000 IRS agent expansion that has already passed into law without similar passage of the new legislation from the Democrat-controlled Senate? No. The answer is no. So, I think we have to be honest here and keep things in perspective with the understanding of the underlying framework of how laws are made in this country. And that is, obviously, they have to pass through both chambers. A bill, I feel like it's the old how a bill becomes a law cartoon. Sometimes we have to keep in mind, and I know most people understand that, of course, but it's got to pass through both chambers, the House and the Senate. And then it's got to be signed by the president to enact it into law, of course. And so the 87,000 IRS agent, the provision that enacted that provision, I should say, was included in this Inflation Reduction Act. And the reason, or besides the fact that the Democrats just want to go harass people to pay more taxes, the reason is that, honestly, the underlying reason is because it makes the math work. And here's what I mean by that. So in order to pass these bills, these spending type bills, using the reconciliation process in the Senate, which only requires a simple majority for passage in the upper chamber, those bills are scored by the CBO. They're bills that include spending and revenue, and they're scored by the CBO over the Congressional Budget Office by over a 10-year basis. And so they look at revenues, they look at expenses, and they have to meet certain thresholds to qualify for passage with a simple majority. And so what they did is they said, okay, we're going to go hire 87,000 IRS agents. That's going to cost X amount of dollars. But we predict that having those 87,000 IRS agents reviewing and auditing all these tax returns is going to produce X amount of new revenue, because they're going to find people that have underpaid their taxes and are essentially cheating on their taxes. And they're going to shake them down, and you're going to have to pay more. That's going to raise this block of revenue. I don't remember the exact projection of that. But so that gets included on the revenue side of the equation, if you will. And then on the spending side, remember, the main spending was capping the price of insulin is one of the things that was like a spending adjustment, just basically price controls, Medicare negotiating, which really wasn't negotiating. It was just dictating to pharmaceutical companies what they're going to sell drugs for. But the other big piece of that was extending the Obamacare subsidies that we've talked about here on the program. That's a bunch of money. And then all the crazy Green New Deal credits. Remember that? What was it, Rhino? 30% or something for a water heater. and then $7,000, $7,500 towards an electric vehicle, and there's different amounts of money for electrical panels and insulation and electric appliances and all these credits. Well, that's spending, and so how are we going to pay for that spending so that the CBO scores it so that it could pass on a simple majority? Well, we're going to have all this revenue over here, and the revenue components included 87,000 IRS agents chasing Americans to go pay more taxes, which is just a huge if. That's not etched in stone. That's just a speculation on their part that, hiring all these people, they're going to shake down American taxpayers. They're going to send in more money, and that'll cover the cost of all these welfare programs. Essentially is what it is, welfare. When you're giving people money to buy a water heater, I consider that to be welfare. Or solar panels, 30% of the cost of solar panels as well. Remember, that was one of the provisions of the so-called climate initiative credits. So that's what it's all about. It's all about making the math work. It's almost a bit of sorcery, to be honest with you, because they tune and tweak this math and throw all these projections on it just so they can pass it with a simple majority. And they also put terms on it, like the Obamacare credits. The enhanced Obamacare credits are only good for 3 years. And that's how they keep the cost down, because it's scored over 10 years to make it fit within the thresholds to pass it on a simple majority. And it's just, it's trickery, because nobody's going to say, oh, yeah, we're going to end that in 3 years. That's the problem we have with the student loan stuff. We paused student loans now for, almost 3 years, Rhino? And nobody's going to show up and say, oh, yeah, start paying them again. And that's the concern that I have with the way all that sausage is made in Washington that deals with finance, for sure. But hope that answered your question. So, no, Republicans in the House alone cannot just make the 87,000 IRS agents go away, but they can put a bill to get everybody on the record. We're taking a break right here. Super Talk News, Fox News, coming back with Sally Doty, the director of BEAM. Stay with us.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. We are live from the Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Joining us now in the Element Wealth studios at the Mississippi Trade Mart is Sally Doty, the director of the Mississippi Office of Broadband Expansion and Accessibility, a.k.a. BEAM. That is a mouthful.
It is, but BEAM is very easy.
Is.
We went for the acronym.
I got it.
Yes.
Well, of course, having been in the IT industry my whole life, it's just nothing but alphabet soup acronyms.
I can do a whole sentence now with only acronyms. It's the craziest.
That's awesome. All right, so a little bit about the history of how this organization that you direct, how did it come about?
So BEAM was created during the last legislative session. There is a tremendous amount of federal funding that's going to be coming down over the next few years, probably 3 to 5 years, and we need a single source of contact in Mississippi to handle all that money that's coming down and to make some decisions and policy decisions about where we want to direct that funding. So the bill was passed and signed into law by the governor, Tate Reeves, in April, and we began work July 1. Now, also what's important, I believe, is to know that we've had some history. It's not that Mississippi didn't have a broadband office at all, but I was over at the public utilities staff, and we did work on broadband expansion at that office.
And I think it's safe to say, is it not, Sally, that maybe the catalyst for this was the legislation signed into law, 3 sessions ago, that allowed the electric cooperatives to provide internet services?
So the federal government had a big another tranche of money that was coming down to states through the Rural Development Opportunity
USDA,
Fund,
was it
the
not?
RDOF, RDOF funding, and so the co-ops wanted to be able to participate in that. We knew that was coming. We didn't want Mississippi to miss out on it, and so yes, there was legislation to allow the co-ops to get into the business because they did not have that authority at the time. And I was actually chair of the Energy Committee in the Senate at that time and handled that bill and the committee and on the floor, and it was a great piece of legislation, I think. But I will tell you, a lot of the co-ops, we had that legislation. Several were going to get into the business. Some were a bit on the fence. And really, in 2020, when Mississippi received, big CARES Act funding that we had to appropriate, well, the legislature made that determination to put $75 million in broadband expansion. And we were really one of the first states to do that. It didn't, the rules were kind of fuzzy. I think that was kind of all on the,
even the whether or not it qualified, right?
Whether or not it qualified at all. But we said, hey, that's what we need to use it for. And we kind of stepped out there after we did. Some other states did as well. It had some pretty tight deadlines to get your infrastructure out, and we did it. So that $75 million from CARES Act, I mean, it's up. It's all on the power pole, or it's in the ground. It's completed. And really, it was a $150 million. We leveraged it up with matching, so it was really a $150 investment in the state.
Yeah. So matching state funds that went along with the federal funds, or
the provider had to match that.
They had to match it to receive the grant.
Match it to receive the grant.
I understand. Yeah. And Mississippi is not one where most of the population is concentrated in urban population centers, right? We're very
scattered out,
sparsely populated, right? And so, which just essentially kind of intensifies the challenge, I think is a way to say it.
It makes it quite a challenge. I always say that Mississippi is kind of like we've got a big jigsaw puzzle, and we're putting all the pieces together. And part of that is the reason I wanted to visit with you today, is because we want Mississippians to help us put together a broadband map for Mississippi. And we have a new website that is out. It is broadbandms.com. broadbandms.com. You can go to that, and it will run 3 speed tests automatically, and then it goes through a series of 5 or 10 questions while that speed test is running. And so we're trying to gather a little bit of information so we can have a true picture of internet service in Mississippi.
Yeah.
If you do not have any service, we have a telephone number that you can call, and I'm sure that your folks will tweet that out for me, but the number is 601-439-2535, and you don't get a real person on that. It's a voice, but we would love for you to leave your address, and we don't need your name, we just need your address, and need you to say, I do not have service, or I have unusable service, or only satellite service, or whatever.
So I'm on the site right now, and the first thing you see on the splash page is a button to conduct a test, a speed test.
Right.
There are lots of tools out there that provide that. And so is this being used as input into you guys' planning as well?
All of this information is coming to we've been through the RFP process. We have a contractor that's helping us with our mapping.
Sure.
And so all of that is driven to create our Mississippi map. There is an FCC map, a new FCC map that came out on November 18th, and you can go to it as well if you would like and look at your location. You can put your address in. It shows that all of Mississippi is 100% covered.
The FCC shows that?
The FCC map does, because it used they included Starlink, which.
Well, technically, it is covered.
But Starlink is not available. We all did it in my office. We all looked at it. And one of the guys in my office, he said, well, I've tried to get Starlink, and it's unavailable for my location. So he filed a challenge. You can file an individual challenge on the FCC map if you would like. We think that process might be kind of bulky and maybe not
No.
Thousands,
government
millions
bureaucracy
of people.
at federal level.
So you might want to go look at the federal map if you want to, but we knew it was not going to quite be a true picture. So we're creating our own Mississippi map because we're going to challenge that federal map, and our first deadline for challenge is January 13th. So we're going to use other data in addition to this website data that we're collecting. We've got a lot of other data we're looking at and working with providers and E911 data and different things. So we're putting it all together.
So other than they're publishing false information, is there something else that's important about that? Funding?
Yes, the funding is what's really important about that, because Mississippi is going to participate in a program which is called BEAD. All states are getting money from BEAD, which was a grant program under the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. It's $42.5 billion, I believe, that is going to be allocated among the states. And it's going to be allocated according to your unserved and underserved locations. So that's why it's so important for us to know what those locations are. So this data that we're collecting on our Mississippi map, just from individuals around the state, is very important to us. It's not the only thing we will use, but it's very important. So we really encourage everyone to go take that test, and if you would take it maybe once a day for a week or so, or take it 5 to 7 times. If you could take it at different times of the day, so we get kind of a true picture of the service you're getting, because what you get in the morning might be different than when everybody's home at night watching a movie, playing games, whatever. So if you could take it at some different times, and if you just don't have service at all, call that phone number and just let us know.
Broadband.ms 601-439-2535 is the number.
Yes, that is the number. You can text that number too. You can text internet to it, or text help or whatever. You can text it as well, and it'll say, it'll give you some prompts to give the information.
All right, so since you've been in this role, give us an update. How's that been going? How are we doing as far as building out?
We are currently administering one $32 million grant fund from the feds. We are about to begin construction on it. And when I say we, it's not me, it's not our office.
Sure.
It is providers throughout the state. And I think with that program, there are about 8 different providers that are participating in that. And that is just with federal funding. Our providers across the state are building out with private dollars all day, every day.
Right.
But this is an interesting time when we have an influx of federal dollars, kind of a one-time influx of federal dollars, kind of like they did with electricity back in the 20s and the 30s. So this is our build-out for broadband infrastructure, and it is focused on fiber.
And this is available to other traditional carriers as well, right? Not just the electric co-ops.
Oh, yes, all carriers. And we talk to all of them on a regular basis and expect all of them to participate in this upcoming funding. So it's moving a little bit slower than I had hoped it would, and as it's any time you're working with federal dollars, there are a lot of hoops you got to jump through.
Sure.
And so we are awaiting approval to stand up a grant program of $162 million. That'll be really the first one that we'll do in our new office. So we cross our fingers, maybe first of the year we'll get approval for that, and then we'll stand up that grant program and get that out the door just as soon as we can.
And we got to go here, but we got 24 electric co-ops in the state, is it right?
20, I thought 25. 25.
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
17 are building out. And of that, I think 4 have totally completed their build out.
Okay, awesome. So folks are getting high-speed broadband internet that didn't have it before. That's the main point.
Very much so, yes.
Broadband.ms 601-439-2535. Sally Doty, the director of BEAM, has been our guest here on Middays. Thanks for coming on, Sally.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Very much.
We're stepping aside for a break right here. Coming back with Representative Vince Mangold. Please stay with us. We're at the Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
My daddy spent his life looking up at the sky. He cussed, kicked the dust, saying, son, it's way too dry. The clouds up in the city, the weatherman complained.
Well, Welcome back, everyone, to Middays Super Talk Mississippi, live from the Mississippi Trade Mart. The Element Well Studios reposition here today for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Rhino, was that Luke Bryan?
It was.
I recognized it.
I didn't know who it was.
Luke Bryan. I'm not a huge country music fan, but I do know a couple of artists here and there. Vince Mangold, a member of the Mississippi House of Representatives. He represents District 53. That includes Franklin, Jefferson Davis, Lawrence, Lincoln, and Pike counties. He's the vice chair of the House Agriculture Committee. Welcome, Vince. What kind of chopped up district do you have to have all those counties?
It's pretty chopped up, and it's pretty rural.
Yeah.
You know, when I ran the first time, they came down. Well, they wanted to come down and say, well, you know, we'll help you walk your district. And after I'd kind of rode through it, I said, y'all can walk it if you want to. I said, but I'm riding. I mean, you know, because it was, you know, miles from driveway to driveway.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a little bit of downtown Brookhaven, but, you know, not a whole lot.
Well, that is a lot of agriculture in that area.
Yes, sir. That's what I like to do.
And you're in that business as well, right?
I am in that business. I'm here today representing the farmers of Mississippi and poultry and cattle. We do both of that. I'm a Farm Bureau member, board member there in Lincoln County.
Yeah.
So this is where it's at.
Wow. And what about this facility, this event? This is a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I was fortunate enough. That was early in my legislative career, and Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith invited several of us over that were ag-related to break ground. I mean, I've got a picture somewhere of us, you know, with the ceremonial shovels in the ground and all this, and so to see it come to fruition is just amazing. It's a beautiful facility.
So desperately needed.
Yes, yes.
So desperately needed. I mean, it had gotten to the point, honestly, where you think about the visitors that come into town that have maybe not ever been to Mississippi, and they're going to events that we would have at the Trade Mart, and it got to the point where you really didn't want them to go to the Trade Mart.
No,
right?
no,
So
it looked pretty rough.
But you want to showcase this one. It's awesome.
This one's got it.
Yeah.
This one's got it right here.
Well,
I mean, you like to see your government money spent wisely, and this was done wisely.
Yeah, I totally agree. So the Farm Bureau Federation, how critical, Vince, has that been to the agriculture industry in our state?
Well, it's like, you know, Mike said this morning when he was on with you, they're the voice of agriculture, you know, and it gave them a seat at the table. And, you know, and I like to say I'm a part of that voice as well as the legislative voice, you know, because, you know, I'm going to see things different than, you know, he talked about folks, you know, never live anywhere where there's not concrete. There's not a whole lot of concrete out where I'm at.
Right, exactly.
You know, and so I like to say I'm here for, you know, to help with the Farm Bureau voice, but also the farmer voice, and Farm Bureau is critical because, you know, we don't have a whole lot of staff, you know, as a legislator.
Sure.
You can pick up the phone and call the Farm Bureau folks and say, look, I've got a question on this. Somebody there can get you an answer.
Yeah.
You know, so they're critical.
And that makes your job easier, too, as a legislator,
yes,
doesn't it?
Yes.
You seek that input. You want that input.
Yes.
You need that input. All too often, you find out about it after the fact, then somebody's mad.
Hey, they'll get mad in a heartbeat, I promise you.
You know, I drove through the Mississippi Delta a couple of days ago. We hosted the show up in Cleveland, Mississippi.
It was a little cool, I heard.
It was cold. I was cold up there. But you know, I just always marvel, Vince, when you don't have to drive too many miles from our position here in central Mississippi up through that delta, and it's just incredible just how fertile that ground is. You can tell because you just see just acres and acres of row crops and a few cattle farms here and there. It's just a big dang industry in our state.
It's huge. Well, I mean, as Mike said, you know, and I'll repeat it, you know, ag is number one in Mississippi. And, you know, the poultry part of that is the number one over all of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, so, you know, the farmers are doing their share in Mississippi to make, you know, Mississippi a better place.
Yeah. And, of course, it's all across Mississippi. Go over into east central part of Mississippi. You're talking about the poultry industry. Huge over there.
Huge over there. I mean, you know, that's the insurance people's biggest fear is a tornado lines up on part of that world.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yes, they talk about it all the time. But it is what it is. But poultry is big business.
So what are you hearing from your peers in the industry, Vince? What are their chief concerns that they're asking you as a member of the legislature perhaps to address, and then of course our congressional delegation as well? What are you hearing from?
Well, I mean, everybody just wants to be allowed to be a farmer, to do what they feel like God has set them apart to do. And he talked about conservation. Farmers are the biggest conservationists. They're not going to do anything that's going to harm the land because it affects what they do.
It's the most precious asset.
Yes.
Is that land.
They've got to take care of it so they can hopefully pass it down to the next generation. And, and so, just leave them, leave the regulations alone, let them do their business, and they'll take care of it. I mean, they don't have to have outside help.
Yeah. And is there anything you've got planned from an agricultural legislative perspective coming up in the next session?
I don't have anything that I'm bringing. A lot of times we end up playing defense.
Yeah.
Somebody will try to come up with something that, on the outside it looks like a good idea, but when you get Farm Bureau involved and let them get down into it and check down in the weeds, and it's going to present a problem down the road, so we'll have to work through that problem, or kill the bill or whatever we've got to do. But
sure.
We're going to do what we can to protect the farmers and ranchers of Mississippi best we can.
Did you take a tour in there? Did you see that big John Deere?
I haven't been in there yet, but I see
that thing.
I heard them talking
huge.
about it. I mean, and there goes to the technology and needing broadband throughout the state.
Yeah.
That thing is looking at weeds going through. I mean, they said 11, 12 miles an hour or something like that. And it identifies a weed and sprays it.
With pinpoint accuracy.
Yes, sir.
Much better than a human can do it.
I mean, and I've got a spray rig on the back of my side-by-side that I spray up next to the chicken houses. Well, I'm going to have overspray. That thing is not.
It's incredible.
It's not wasting anything.
That's what Mike said, like an 80% reduction of the chemical use, which are through the roof price-wise.
You look at what that's going to save the farmer. And all these, the seeds that they plant that are Roundup ready and all of this. I mean, it makes a big deal to that farmer.
Yeah.
Because he'll have to only go through there one time.
Yeah.
That's saving diesel, saving chemicals, everything is a saving. And so anything you can do to make the farmer's job easier. Now, it's no telling what that bad boy's going to cost. That's the other thing people don't realize, is what those things cost.
But when you sit down and probably do a return on investment analysis, I bet you get a pretty quick payback when you think about that.
I would imagine. When you're talking about reducing your chemical costs by, up to 80%, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because that's one of your big, cost as far as farming is, as far as the row crop guys, is the chemicals.
Yeah. And which have increased substantially over the last couple of years, and fertilizer as well. There's numerous reports about that. I'm sure you've probably seen some of these reports from other areas on the planet. Netherlands comes to mind, where it seems like they want to put the entire agriculture industry out of business in the name of climate change. And some of that stuff's starting to invade in this country as well by some of the climate change ideologues. Does this bother you?
It does, because so many people listen to that.
Yeah.
And they need to realize where their food is coming from, where their clothes are coming from.
Drugs.
All medicine. Of that is coming back to the farm.
Yeah.
And so they need to realize all that. If you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, right now we're having trouble, with farmers, the next generation, not wanting to take up the mantle.
Yeah.
I've got a daughter that's 30 years old. She has no desire, not married, no desire to come back to the farm.
Yeah.
So
how are we going to eat?
What are we going to do?
Clothes. It's essential.
It's exactly right.
But the more I see of this stuff, I just, it's like, do you not get it that we can't survive without what this industry and what these people do? We should be thanking them every day, not coming up with ways to make their lives more difficult and produce less. You got to go. You can hang around for another segment.
I can hang around.
Yeah, let's talk about when we come back what we think may be on the boards for the upcoming 2023 session. Where
you may know more than I do.
No, we'll talk about it. But we're a month away. You guys are going to be down here at the Capitol.
Yes, sir.
Coming right back at the Mississippi Trademark for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Stay with us.
Started today.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back at the Mississippi Trademark for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau, the 100-year celebration, the centennial celebration of the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Our guest here in the Element Well Studios in the Trademark Corridor, just outside of the doors entering into Trade Hall B, is Representative Vince Mangold. So, Vince, appreciate your update and certainly your insight, sir, on the agriculture industry.
Yes,
being part of it is very valuable. Appreciate that. But let's turn our attention to the upcoming legislative session. Now, I know you said before we went to break, may not know a whole lot about what's going on, but let's start with this. It's an election year.
Yes, sir.
So how is that different than a normal year?
From my experience, and I don't have a whole lot of experience from this, they usually try to do as much low key as they can. Not a whole lot of heavy lifting. We handle what business we've got to handle, but they try not to get off in the weeds on anything just really troublesome. But if it shows up, we will handle it. But we'll know. Everybody will be on pins and needles that first month. But early February, we'll know if we have opponents. We'll know who's running, who's not running. But that's pretty much already has been decided. The ones that have said they're retiring. And you had some that aren't coming back because of redistricting. Their district changed, and got combined and moved and absorbed by something else. And so you'll have some of those that won't be there. But, it'll be pins and needles there for a little while until everybody finds out if they've got an opponent or not.
Yeah. So Speaker of the House Philip Gunn announced, of course, to the conference that he will not seek re-election for his House seat.
Yes, sir.
Coming next year. Do you think that may also signal a change for the speakership for the next year?
Well, I think he's going to finish out.
Okay.
This is just me talking.
Sure.
This is Vince Mangold.
Well, that's what we're asking.
I think he finishes it out. The heir apparent, everything, you ask most everybody, Jason White would be the front runner for anything, and you may see Jason at the podium more this next session. Just kind of getting everybody more familiar, and everybody knows Jason and likes Jason. But they may, he may stand to the podium and do more of the day-to-day business. Okay. I could see that happening. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, I think Jason is well positioned. It feels like
I think so.
To move into that role.
Super smart, super likable. I appreciate Jason a bunch.
And you make a good point there. Certainly having a deep knowledge of policy is important.
It is.
But But let's be honest, herding the cats in the house is a tough task, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, you're talking about 122, different individuals. So, yeah, I don't know if I would want it. Not to say I wouldn't, but that takes somebody, some serious wrangling.
Yeah.
Throwing a farmer's technique
Absolutely.
in there. Serious wrangling.
Absolutely. And you got to be able to, of course, count the votes. You got to know where everybody stands on issues, and you've got to take into consideration how they're taking positions and voting certain ways on certain legislation, how that affects them should they be thinking about seeking re-election in the next cycle.
Right. That's right.
Got to balance all that out and try to get stuff done.
And that's the thing about Speaker Gunn and his staff, and Jason included, because he worked with him. If there was something controversial, we pretty much knew if the votes were there before we got to the floor.
Yeah.
And they would protect you. If the votes weren't there, they weren't bringing it out on the floor for a fight.
Okay.
And so you appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it lets you keep face with, folks across the aisle, and I'd like to think that I've got friends on the other side. I try to make sure and speak to everybody,
sure.
and because you don't want to be alienated or alienate anybody else.
Sure.
So you have to do a good job of handling everybody and approaching everybody with the same as you would Republican or Democrat.
Yeah.
Treat them all the same.
I've sat in the gallery a few times and
I've
just
seen you there.
observed. And I would say that overall it looks to be fairly amicable. I just don't see people on, even when they're on different sides of the aisle or different sides of a bill or an issue, I've never seen it elevate to the point of hostility.
Right. And that's the thing that, early on, I remember Representative Steve Holland.
Mm-hmm.
He would get to the well, and he would holler and scream and fuss. And
that's just his style.
And that's just his style, but he was going to tell it the way he wanted told and argue the way he wanted it argued, the way he thought it should be done. If he got beat, fine.
Yeah.
He see you in the hall, shake hands. Hey, you want to go grab something to eat?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
That's absolutely right.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's a good point. So last year, anytime I've had a member of the legislature on, Vince, or the statewide elected folks, I've always sort of described the 22 session as a very active and eventful session.
Yes, sir.
A lot happened.
I'll agree.
The one thing that was unfinished, that just to get your thoughts on, was the citizen-initiated ballot measure process, which essentially the Supreme Court invalidated as it stands right now.
Correct.
In our Constitution. And so that's got to get fixed if we want the citizens to have the ability to get a measure on the ballot for broad vote. And so we couldn't get that done. The Senate and the House couldn't agree on, I think the fundamental sticking point, as I recall, was the number of votes required.
Right.
Pardon me, signatures required. Signatures required to pass the muster with the Secretary of State to get the measure on the ballot. Do you feel like that's going to come up again in this coming session?
I'm sure it will. I know that's one thing you were talking about, Representative Shanks.
Yeah.
That's going to fall in his committee. I think we will try to get something done. We were holding the line, the amount of signatures that they have previously.
Yeah.
The same basic program.
Right.
The only difference was it wasn't going to go to a constitutional amendment. It was going to all be statutory.
The measure itself. Right.
It would go into law. That way, if we've got a problem, we can go and fix it.
And change it.
We do it all the time.
Because any change in any amendment to our Constitution has to be ratified by the people.
Right. You have to line up and do it again.
Yeah. At a statewide, at a statewide election.
Exactly. You can't just say, "Hey, let's do this now." It's got to wait till you have a
next statewide.
Yep. And so, I think something's going to get done. If we can work with the Senate and maybe shrink the number, between us and them.
Yeah.
I would love to see it stay where it was. That was easy.
I would too, honestly.
And the people need that opportunity. If they don't like something we're doing, or if they don't think we did enough, well, they can go out and do the business and get the signatures and bring it to a vote like that. That's part of America.
Yeah.
I think it's a good policy.
Yeah. So Carolyn Starkville, one of our regular listeners, says, wishing Governor Reeves and family a Merry Christmas, along with the legislative members and their families. Thank you for caring for Mississippi and Mississippians. Really nice, Carol. Thanks for sending that in.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and same to you, Carol, as well. But it's hard to believe, Vince, you guys are going to be the third. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Whatever. All right, the first is on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, be the third.
Be the third.
Yeah. We'll be in quick.
That's unbelievable.
Yes, sir.
That we're at that again. So I wonder how much sort of political theater we may see because it is an election year. In your experience, do you think that happens sometimes?
I don't know. You know, you're going to find out really quick in the session, you know, who's running for what.
Yeah. Because it's February 1 this year.
Yeah.
This time,
I mean, you know, because we adjusted that. Passed legislation to shorten that window because, you know, we were going all the way through session wondering.
That's right.
If we were going to have an opponent.
We're going to know right in the middle of the session.
We're going to know really quick. You're going to know who's lining up for statewide offices.
Yeah.
You know, if there's going to be anything different there. You know, it's going to be interesting really quick.
Yeah.
Really quick.
Well, it'll give us plenty to talk about here.
Oh, yes. Yes, you won't have any problems getting subject to talk about.
Yeah. Well, so we got that coming up, 23. Now, most important question, you running for re-election?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm going to seek re-election there for District 53. It'll be a little bit different. You listed my counties there at the beginning. All the counties are the same, but I lost that little piece. I had just a piece of a box of Jeff Davis.
Okay. So you got Franklin, Lawrence, Lincoln, and Pike? Is that right?
The core stayed the same, but I mean it was just a piece of a box over there, and you know, and I told him, I said, I don't know if we're doing them a good job by me just having a piece of a box, you know. So
makes sense.
So I picked up a little more in Lawrence. A little less than Franklin, but everything else pretty much stayed the same.
Well, it's a great region for the state of Mississippi, that southwest area of our great state. And Vince, you represent them well as well, and we appreciate you coming on Midday, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Jamie Swafford, marketing manager for Ag Up Equipment, is our guest next here on Middays. We are in the Element Well Studios at the Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on!
Let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. We are in the Element Well Studios in the beautiful Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Joining us now is Jamie Swafford, Marketing Manager for Ag Up Equipment. Jamie, good to have you, and I'll let you introduce our other guest.
Yeah, I brought Russell Cawthon with me. He is our Integrated Solutions Manager at Ag Up Equipment.
All right, so tell us about Ag Up, exactly what you guys do.
Ag Up Equipment is a John Deere dealership with 16 locations in Arkansas and Mississippi.
Did you drive that one in here?
No, not allowed anymore.
That thing is gigantic. I'm going to bet that Russell may be able to tell us about that piece of equipment in there. Mike told us about it earlier.
Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit. So that particular machine you're sitting there looking at is the See and Spray machine that John Deere kind of somewhat released this past year. Be full bore production next year. There'll be 3 of those running in the Mississippi region next year. 120-foot boom machine, 36 cameras scattered across the boom, identifying the difference between weed and crop, only spraying the weeds.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I actually remember reading about the development of this technology like 10, 12 years ago.
Correct.
And it just thought it would sort of revolutionize that task to a crop farmer and probably others as well. I happened to see, Russell, an interview I talked to Mike about this a couple of days ago on the Business Network with the Chief Information Officer of John Deere, and it was at a big event for the ag industry. And he was sharing the company's vision for the future of the company and what they're working on, what they've got in development to serve the agriculture industry. It's mind-boggling.
It is. That, you know, I'll take a quote from one of the John Deere execs from a couple years ago. Was at a meeting, and his vision at the time for John Deere is they want to be the Apple of agriculture, and you know, I thought that was a pretty unique way of putting it.
They're really an IT company that happens to make farm equipment.
Correct.
Is really what it boils down to. So, Jamie, tell us about Ag Up. You guys are, of course, big John Deere dealer. Is that what how would you describe it?
That is. So, we are the John Deere dealer here in the Jackson metro area in South Mississippi.
Incredible.
So we have 4 stores now in Southeast Arkansas.
So I know that besides the sales of the equipment, you guys really promote your fantastic service capabilities as well, right?
We do. You know, when you buy this piece of equipment, you're not buying just the equipment. You're also buying the service that we provide after the sale. So whether it be with people like Russell who are helping manage your data, or just actually servicing your actual equipment, that's as important as the actual sale itself.
And so I got to believe, Jamie, that when you think about the way technology has revolutionized this industry, that farmers maybe not so long ago sort of knew what they wanted before they walked in the store, and they just came in and bought it with some counseling and advice. But now with all this new technology, my guess is they're introducing stuff that they didn't even know existed when they come shopping, and you guys have to educate them to a great extent and inform them of what's available that would best serve their needs and their applications.
That is true, but also I think people discount how intelligent and on top of things farmers.
Oh yeah, and I'm not suggesting that at all. But keeping up with all that while you're being a farmer gets to be pretty difficult.
They do rely on us for that, but there are a lot of them out there that are in the know and want that latest and greatest because they understand the capabilities and how it's going to save them money and
sure.
Well, one of the kind of the visions I have for us as a dealership is we want to provide the answers to these farmers to these questions about questions they don't even know they need to ask.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And many of them are, as you say, they're sort of becoming technologists as well in addition to being farmers, because they're using all this technology to just improve their efficiencies and their yields and so forth. Before we go, how's business? Everything going well for you right now?
Everything is great, and we cannot forget our small ag guys, because we have poultry here, we have hay here, and technology is coming to that as well. People don't think about it, but it's coming.
Oh, I totally understand that. I think last time you and I talked, we were discussing the supply chain issues that were plaguing the industry. Is that starting to loosen up a little bit?
We're starting. Russell can answer a little better. We're starting to see a little.
Starting to. We're still feeling the pains of it, but we're coming out of it.
Yeah. So we still got issues with getting folks back to work, and of course we got issues abroad in China to the extent any components or parts are manufactured over there. So hopefully we get through this, because I know the farmers depend quite a bit on what you guys do.
I think 2023 is going to be a better year.
That's good to hear. Jamie Swafford, Marketing Manager, Ag Up, and Russell Cawthon, Integrated Solutions Manager, has been our guest here on Middays. We're stepping aside for SuperTalk News, Fox News. Coming right back. We got an hour of Middays left. We're at the Mississippi Farm Bureau for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. Down at the Mississippi Trademark today for 100 years of Faith Family and Farm Bureau. So on the C Spire text line, we got a text from Ben from Madison. Says, Gerard, I appreciate you reminding legislators about the ballot initiative process. I think it's important the signature requirement remains the same as the previous process. Hopefully it will be a top priority for the legislature this session. I'm with you, Ben. And you know, I bring that up because I consider it probably the highest profile measure that didn't get done. It did not get enacted. If you think about all the major accomplishments during the session, the teacher pay raise, tax reform, medical marijuana, those are kind of some high-profile bills that come to mind. All those got done, got enacted into law. But the ballot measure was one that the ballot measure process initiated by citizens is one that went back and forth, but never got across the finish line. And so I feel like it's just unfinished business that needs to be addressed again. And I agree with you in general on the surface, Ben. I can't see why we can't continue with the signature requirements as is. I believe it's 12% of the total votes cast in the prior gubernatorial election. I think that's what our law says. 12% is the number that comes to mind. It amounted to about 108,000 if we were to do it based on the last governor's election. It would be somewhat more. I want to say the legislature, the Senate wanted 20% instead of 12 or something between 12 and 20 perhaps, that would have just required harvesting more signatures, which costs money and takes more time. It's not that it's not doable, but it is more expensive. And so maybe in doing so, you're dissuading people, organizations, individuals that might have an interest in getting a measure drafted up and going through the hoops of collecting the signatures and meeting the other requirements to get it on the ballot. I'm not really sure what the Senate's rationale was, or those in the Senate that wanted to increase the number of signatures required to certify the measure. I'd like to hear the rationale, honestly, for that. Don't know that there was ever any discussion of that or any statements made to that end. It would be interesting, I think, just to see and hear what their thoughts were on that. Also, Ben says, it worries me that Dems can keep going back to reproductive rights messaging. I don't know if the Dem message on abortion will still resonate, but you have to think they'll continue to pound that message through until it stops working. Yeah, and this is just, Ben is just writing in response to some statements we made earlier, some information we shared earlier on the program that show that the Gen Z voting block, not really vote as a block, but just that demographic is a better way to describe it, came out in very high numbers in the midterm elections, much more than all the pundits expected, and to a great extent were not included in all the various polls. They just generally don't respond to polls, and also aren't targeted as much because they don't go out and vote. And but certainly in the post and the exit polling data shows that a whole lot of Gen Z folks did show up to vote, and they voted overwhelmingly Democrats, and they all stated that it was because of their perception that Republicans were very anti-choice and pro-life, but anti-choice from the standpoint to the extent that they want to completely ban abortion in the country, which really is not what overturning Roe v. Wade did. It's been discussed countless times, but still the Democrats very effectively, I think, point to that as the goal of Republicans. And then, of course, you had Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina in the U.S. Senate, that was proposing a federal legislation codifying a ban on abortion after 15 weeks, which would further restrict it relative to what Roe v. Wade or I should say the Dobbs case did in overturning Roe v. Wade, which simply sent it back to the states. And what bothers me about this is that from a constitutional, from a legal perspective, sending it back to the states and overturning Roe, I think, got it right. The Supreme Court got it right. It is a matter for the states, and there really isn't anything in our Constitution that guarantees the right to an abortion. It just sat there for a long time, and I think it's probably safe to say the makeup of the court didn't exist to really bring a case before them that had a chance of overturning that landmark legislation from 1973. Of course, our Attorney General, Lynn Fitch, was the leader on that with the Dobbs case. And it's still kind of interesting, isn't it, folks, that Dr. Thomas Dobbs, who was the head of the Department of Health in the state of Mississippi, I mean, his name will forever go down in the history books as being associated with the case, because he was the one that was sued, and by the Jackson Women's Health Clinic. So that essentially is the case that got elevated all the way to the court and ultimately ended up overturning Roe v. Wade. So I still kind of find that a fascinating connection to the state of Mississippi and Dr. Dobbs himself personally. But the poll, to your point though, Ben, nationwide polls show that most Americans, some 60+%, do support some form of access to abortion. And it depends on how the question is worded, but with respect to before 15 weeks, the majority of Americans do support access. And then in the case of rape, incest, or any situation that might risk the mother's life or health as well, when you get over the 15-week threshold, the numbers start to change and they start to flip, where most people oppose it. But as long as the Democrats, and that includes, by the way, lots of Republicans as well, that do support some form up to the 15-week viability, what it's thought to be, at least by many, the viability point during pregnancy. So that's still going to be a political hot potato, and I think the Democrats are going to use that messaging very effectively, and I think it will continue to be effective. I think it stands to reason that as the population ages out in the country and younger people come of voting age, that the numbers tend to be skewed among the younger population in favor of some form of access to abortion. So that may actually hurt going forward from a political perspective, as you've got more older folks aging out off the voter rolls and younger folks coming on it that are more pro-choice. We'll see how all that lands, but it's something to at least just be aware of from a political perspective. You mentioned sending it back to the states. As a conservative, this is Jeff in Forest County. As a conservative, getting government out of your business, how about sending it back to the individual? Well, I'll tell you why, Jeff, because, and this is really the core of the debate, the argument. Sending what? Murder? Because those on the right that are staunchly pro-life and want to outlaw all forms of abortion, it's based on their belief that that abortion and aborting a baby in the womb, even if it's described by many on the left as a clump of cells, a fetus, that's where the disagreement is. They don't see it as taking the life of a human, whereas those who are pro-life do. So that's the crux of the argument. So honestly, your statement's irrelevant. It's not about the individual. What about the individual child in the womb? And that would be how conservatives that are pro-life would see that and would couch that. So that essentially is the argument. And those that view it as literally as homicide versus those who think, oh no, you're just essentially removing a clump of cells that are lifeless in effect. Gary and Meridian, Rhino, sent us a photo of potted meat Twinkies? Tell me that's not actually happening. Potted meat filling inside a Twinkie? Gary, that's got to be a joke, right? Tell me that. But I'm looking at the box with a photo of a Twinkie and a can of Libby's potted meat sitting right next to it, and it certainly appears there's potted meat in the Twinkie. All right, Gary, tell us about that. We're going to come back here in the Element Wealth Studios down at the Mississippi Trade Mart. We're here for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Stay with us.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau down here at the Mississippi Trade Mart. What a celebration they have planned, the Farm Bureau Federation, throughout the weekend. I'm looking at the little brochure, the booklet, and it is just a jam-packed agenda. Gets underway this afternoon here later on, and then for both Saturday and Sunday, things get cranked up at 7 a.m. On Sunday at 7 a.m., a worship service at the Sheraton Refuge, the Grand Ballroom. So they're occupying a number of different venues around the area to celebrate this 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. So it looks like the Senate, the U.S. Senate, has succeeded in passing legislation that will, in fact, avert a big old strike, a rail strike, which was a huge concern. And, of course, it's still kind of mind-boggling, but there's a 1926, I think it's called the Rail Act, that authorizes, empowers the U.S. Congress, the government, along with the president, to intervene in the railroad industry in situations where there may be a labor dispute that would a strike could shut down the railroads and cause great harm to the U.S. economy. In that situation, they can't intervene. They did, and so what they're essentially doing is negotiating a contract on behalf, you could say, of the union and the railroads, and putting that in place that the parties would abide by, get back to work. And one of the sticking points was sick leave. Now, we talked about this the other day, and I'll have to say that I did a bit of research on this, Rhino, after we discussed it, and found out that presently the rail unions, there are 12 of them, their present employment contract, 12 different unions, only includes 1 day of sick leave. Now, I do think that is a bit out of touch and not aligned with the present market conditions for employees and for benefits for employees offered by their employer. I was a little shocked to learn only one. So it is true that the rail workers were having to use their vacation days anytime they had a legitimate reason to be away from work due to illness. And so what they wanted was 7 days. And even the union bosses, read a couple of reports about this, that were negotiating, union bosses with the actual employers, the railroad companies themselves. Even they were more focused on pay, an increase in pay, and weren't really addressing the sick leave issue, which I found to be rather astonishing. And even in that scenario, 8 of the unions were willing to accept that agreement in September. 4 were not. But it turns out that those 4 that were unwilling to accept that agreement comprised the vast majority of the workers. The 8 unions that were on board with it don't represent as many workers as the 4 who were opposed to it, which I thought was rather interesting. So there's still some question as to whether or not in a separate agreement, separate from the overall employment agreement and the compensation aspect of it, that the Congress will be able to step in with a separate bill that would provide for the 7 days they're asking for. There seems to be broad support for that, but it's getting a little contentious, and not really quite sure where all that is going to land at this point. But I did want to say that I wasn't aware the other day when I was talking about this that they do not presently have more than 1 day of sick leave. I learned that since our discussion of this on the program, and so I do find that to be unreasonable. I do believe that they need to have more time than that. 7 days certainly sounds reasonable, but then it depends on how many vacation days they get. I think you have to look at all of that sort of time off, paid time off situation as what's reasonable in that respect. And of course, it's what the market will bear. I'm really surprised that the workers continue to stay on with these railroad companies only having 1 day of sick leave. I'm just a little surprised that hasn't come up before.
It's because they have 30 days of vacation.
Well, that was the question. So that's okay. Thank you for that, because that does change the equation a bit, right? If you get 30 days of vacation, well, that's probably a little higher than the average. I haven't done the research on that, but I think most people, I'd be curious to know, that are tuned in, that are employed. How many days does your employer give of vacation? So what we did at my company, for what it's worth, and I think a lot of companies have moved in this direction, you just got a bucket of paid time off, and you use it however you want: vacation, sick, bereavement, etc. You know, you have this all the time, Rhino. Schools got to go to a school function for my kids. Of course, sure, you should be off for that, need to be off for that. Do you need off all day, though? Probably not. And so that's where I start to question some of those motivations and some of what I guess the employees are looking for. But yeah, there's got to be some reasonableness test there, certainly, for sure. But you're enlightening me now, Rhino. I didn't look it up, but it does kind of make you wonder. Okay, so you're going to get 30 days of vacation plus 7 days of sick leave plus a 24% increase in pay that, as we discussed the other day, is retroactive for 2 years. I get 3 weeks vacation and no sick leave, says Keith in Vaden. Okay, there you go. Appreciate that, Keith. If they were getting 2 weeks of vacation and then layer on top of that 7 days of sick, that would equate to your 3 weeks, Keith. I would say, yeah, that's reasonable. 4 weeks plus 1 personal on the C Spire text line. 1 week personal, so that's a total of 5 weeks. That sounds a little high, but there's a question I would have for the person who sent us that, Rhino, is that for everybody that works in your company, or do you have to be employed for a certain number of years to qualify? Because this is the way we did it in our company. We escalated the number of days of PTO based on your tenure, based on your time with the company. It was an incentive for you to stay with the company. But look, it's private concern, in my view, between the employer and the employee, and given the situation we have now with an incredibly tight labor market, we reported yesterday 1.7 jobs available for every worker out there who's unemployed. That's upside down. We did get unemployment numbers today, by the way, and they actually came in a little hotter than expected. In economic parlance, hotter means that the expectation for the number of jobs, in this case created was lower than the actual number, and that sent the markets into a negative territory because that usually signals to the Fed, hey, we're still trying to fight this inflation, and as long as all these people are working and earning money, they got money to spend, and that props up inflation, and therefore we're going to have to be more aggressive with the interest rates. That's kind of the cause and effect process there, scenario there, and that tells the markets, hey, we're going to keep seeing these these interest rate increases, and they don't like that. So that's still a little surprising. I just think we have so many people that during the pandemic, with all the helicopter money, chose to retire, sold their assets, house prices through the roof, etc., went to the sidelines, are not in the workforce. This is hurting from a tightness of the employment, the labor market situation, and that is contributing, of course, to inflation quite a bit. No vacation. Everybody get back to work on the C-Spire text line. Ed from New Hope says DOD employees get 156 hours vacation per year and 104 sick hours at Department of Defense. Ed, is that who you're talking about? 156 hours of vacation? Wow.
That's just shy of 20 days.
Right. Well, it depends on Rhino, right?
If you're doing full 8 hours.
8 hours. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Well, that's, let's call it a month. Just a little shy of a month. And then 104 sick hours. It sounds like a lot. That's, 2 weeks and half a day. That seems a little high there, but again, it's a bit relative, I guess, and subjective. For sure. Chad from McGee says, I get 4 weeks of vacation each year, but it took 20 years to get it. There you go. 2 personal days also on working on the railroad. Okay. Appreciate that, Chad. Luke in Flowood, 2 weeks until your 5th year anniversary, and then 3 weeks after 10 years goes to 4 weeks. So I think, Rhino, that's a pretty common structure where your number of vacation, your PTO days increases with time worked for the company. Taking a break right here. When we come back, Andy Berry, the president of the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring.
Welcome back, everyone, to Middays Super Talk Mississippi. We are at the Mississippi Trade Mart for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau, the centennial celebration of the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Joining us now is Mr. Andy Berry, the president of the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association. Andy, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you as well.
I was just looking through this booklet here. It is a jam-packed schedule they've got lined up for the weekend.
Yes, sir. It's a big event. Lots of things happening for anybody in agriculture or private property ownership. This is the place to be this weekend to come and see what we've got. Trade booths. We've got a lot of educational events. Livestock shows going on. It's just something for everybody for rural and agricultural parts of Mississippi.
Yeah. All right, so tell us about your association, your members, how they faring with all the headwinds they've had to face the last couple of years.
It's been tough, and particularly this fall. My cattle producers have had kind of a tough fall. We had a drought coming out of the summer.
Yeah.
Forages were kind of tight, and then we had such an early frost in October that we started having to feed hay and feed a lot sooner than we normally would have, and so it's been a struggle so far this year.
Yeah. What about the upcoming legislative session we've got on the way? It's hard to believe it's a month and a day or so away.
It's coming quick.
I know, it does. Anything in particular that you're going to be talking to the legislature about that your members need?
There's a couple of tax issues that we'd like to talk about. Maybe getting some exemptions on some agricultural input products that we use. Mainly we want to protect the tax exemptions that we do enjoy when this conversation of the income tax reduction continues on up there this year. We want to make sure we protect those exemptions that we have. And, we always like to pay less taxes. I think that's something that all of us in the country like to do. And so, there's a couple things like that. And the time might not be right this particular session for that, but, we want to stay on guard on that. One thing that's important to us is to make sure that our extension service, Mississippi State Extension Service, is properly funded. Our friends at the Ag Department, that they get the monies they need. One of the things that they do that really benefits us is the Ag Theft Bureau.
Yeah.
They're kind of the unsung heroes out there of agriculture in Mississippi, of making sure that property is stolen, it gets recovered. They're out there just primarily focused on that agricultural theft.
What about at the federal level? Anything in particular there?
Well, Farm Bill time is coming up, and so that's something that we're keeping an eye on there. There's a couple of issues there. Some conservation programs that are out there. We do a great job as cattle producers of being conservationists, and so we want to make sure that there's some programs out there called Conservation Stewardship Program, the Environmental Quality Improvement Program. Make sure those are funded well, and that we can be able to enjoy those programs. There's some risk protection program out there that's really of interest to us. It's called Livestock Risk Protection. A lot of the row crop guys, they've got kind of some safety net programs and things that kind of help protect them in some volatile markets. We don't have that in the livestock industry. And we've seen some really, really big black swan events in the livestock markets in the last few years. And so we're trying to look to make some improvements to this livestock protection program that's kind of an insurance on future prices, and to make that fit kind of our model here in the Southeast a little better, to not get too technical in the weeds with that. But, risk protection and conservation are two of the big issues that we're looking for in the Farm Bill coming up.
What about some of the inflationary pressures and just the overall economic obstacles and challenges that the industry's had to deal with? How's that looking these days?
It's just as hard. It's some feed that I'm buying. I was buying a month ago for like 16 cents a pound. It's up to 22 cents a pound now. The last I picked up last week, and that's just in the last 2 months. And so you're seeing that across the board on all of our inputs. And I think we've talked about this before as cattle producers. When our livestock get ready, they need to be sold. You've got maybe a week or so there, but depending on the markets, we can't let them grow like a tree, or we can't put them in a silo like corn or beans or something like that. We've got to sell them. So we're more adverse of risk these volatile markets, and so it's really a concern for us when we see all these inputs go up.
Yeah. Now, what about the industry overall, Andy, in the country? How's it doing?
It's okay. We've had a drought across our country. Unfortunately, due to some herd sell-off, their cow numbers overall in the United States, the herd's going to be lower going into next year. That may mean for some higher calf prices for us coming into 2023. We thought that was going to happen in 22. It didn't quite get there, but as much cows herd reduction that we've had, it's going to be hard not to see where we're not going to have some better prices for our calves next year.
Interesting. Well, what about the global market?
Demand is strong, and that's surprising. Seeing the challenges that we had, particularly coming out of the pandemic, but beef demand continues to grow and outpace, and that's a testament to the product that we produce. We produce what I think is the best protein out there is beef, and so we see demand for it all across the globe.
Yeah. Any concerns about just the push from some, not only in the country but across the world, to just honestly just eliminate beef totally from human consumption?
That's always a concern, and that's something that we try to make sure that we have a seat at the table with those type of places that are having those conversations. Sometimes that our industry gets a little ridiculed for being there, but you need to have a seat at the table to make sure that you're representing your point of view and the positives that you do. What's great about cattle and beef is, cattle take a protein, a grass that is otherwise unpalatable for anything else. And they take that and they turn that into such a high-quality protein, which is beef, as their finished product, that through the rumination process that no other animal out there is doing. And so, we're really sustainable in what we do and how our cattle thrive and live, and just their being. This is a sustainable model, and so you take across our country, there's so much land out there that's not suitable for row crops. And so what it is suitable for is grazing. And so that's the best use of that land, is to be out there and to be grazed and to make the most benefit of that.
That's a great point. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever heard it described that way in the past, Andy. And certainly those that seek to just end the industry, they don't seem to be thinking about that either.
No, it's not. And you can go further a step and look out west and all the fires that we've had.
Yeah.
One of the solutions to that is grazing, is to cut down on that underbrush, and to reduce the fuel load that they have in those western states. And that's something that we've been prevented through several administrations of having full access to a lot of that BLM and Forest Service land that's grazing. That's a huge industry out west, is grazing those government lands.
We've talked with guests earlier today that have concerns about whether or not we're producing new generations of farmers. And just passing down, most of which comes from families that have been in it for a very long time, and they pass that down, and now they're finding that their offspring really don't have an interest in continuing that. Is that a concern for you?
It's a big concern for us, and it's an actual fact that there's a problem there. Here in a minute, we're going to have a speaker come up and talk about succession planning to the next generation.
Yeah.
But we've got to make it rewarding financially.
Sure.
For the next generation to stay involved in that. And that's something that I try to communicate to all politicians at all level. In Mississippi, when you have a healthy agricultural industry, particularly a cow type of industry, we're not pocketing and growing our wealth. What we're doing is we're growing our assets. When we sell our livestock, we turn that money over. We buy more feed, we buy more fence, we buy a tractor, we buy a gate, we buy a truck. That money gets turned over in the community. You can look at the Delta you've seen the growth in large farms and the death of small towns. And so we want to make sure that doesn't happen in our cow-calf part of the state, that we can keep our cow-calf and cattle people healthy, to keep these rural communities and keep the economic growth alive in rural Mississippi.
Yeah, it makes sense. So where does the cattle industry, where does it rank within the overall agriculture industry in the state?
In Mississippi, I think we're 12th or 15th in there. We're kind of down the line in total value of production there. There's some big commodities out there in front of us, but we're respectable. I think around $1 billion of sales that we do a year.
Is it staying fairly level? You see growth or
pretty
decline?
level? It's we've had some sellouts through the last year. It's been challenging with the inputs that you talked about earlier. We've had some sellouts of folks getting older and selling out. But you also see some younger folks that are growing and getting kind of like I talk about, getting larger. In terms of their herd and not having those small herds and more people involved in it. So it's just a concern for us.
Yeah. And I guess we just have new generations coming up that are looking for a different lifestyle, but still, you can live in the areas of Mississippi where they could be cattle farmers and still have a pretty dang good lifestyle.
You can, and I do it as a second job. I have a job here in town, and then I go home every night, and by the light of the tractor, my flashlight, I farm, and there's a lot of folks like me out there that do that as a supplemental income. But we do see, and particularly across the state, I see a lot of young folks that are getting into it. It's the asset and the money that it takes to get involved in it. You got to have land, you got to have tractors, you got to have some help to get started into this business.
Well, it sounds like though we're going to have to probably put our heads together and address this issue because we all rely on it.
I agree. Again, to me, I think one of the things just worth repeating is when we have a healthy livestock and agriculture industry, we've got a healthy economic Mississippi.
Absolutely makes sense. Andy, thanks for coming on.
Sir.
Good to see you.
Appreciate you having me.
Andy Berry, president of the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association, has been our guest with the Mississippi trademark for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau. Coming right back with a final segment on Middays. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
As soon as you are able
be Kevin Cronin on the vocals there. Gary Richcraft on the electric guitar. REO Speedwagon. I'm still mad, Rhino, because they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What can we do about that? Who do I express my grievance to? The Hall of Fame selectors, I guess. They got to be in the Hall of Fame. It's just crazy. Wanted to pass on, folks, that Thomas in Greenwood paid me a visit this morning, Rhino. Came by the Trade Mart, is in town for some family things he's taking care of, and really appreciate him coming by and showing his face and shaking my hand. I know we like to spar and have fun on the text line here, but it was good of him to take his time to come down to the Trade Mart, come to the building, and come find us here at the Element Wealth Studios and say hello. Appreciate that, Tom. It's good to see you, man, and hope you have a good time here in the central Mississippi area. Also, you probably saw the same thing I did, Rhino, that the rail workers receive 3 weeks of paid vacation and up to 14 days of personal leave. Is that sort of where you got the 30 days of vacation figure that you shared with us, which does, I think, change the complexion of the argument for 7 paid sick days? Would you agree with that? I mean, it's
and if you're
almost 2 months.
If you've got any seniority whatsoever, you can bump those days that you're paid to be off up to over 40.
Yeah, it's crazy. Does it not seem like in this country that anytime we're discussing work, that we spend more time discussing benefits than we do work? Like, when the heck do we ever work? And because everything's focused on work and how to avoid work as opposed to producing and working. And I'm generalizing a little bit, I realize that, but it does seem like, to a great extent, driven, I think, by this just panoply of programs that are producing this helicopter money from the federal government, that the virtue and value of work has been diminished. It just feels like it. That remember Nancy Pelosi a few years ago talking about how unemployment benefits were really beneficial to Americans because it allowed them to go pursue their dreams, like being an artist or something like that. It just feels like there's this constant narrative where work is being diminished, and that's scary. Joe in Meridian says, where I work, have a zero tolerance for sick call-in unless you have or can get FMLA, family medical leave. Vacation and personal days have to be scheduled 2 weeks unless you get your coworkers to cover. I mean, I hear you, Joe, and I don't want to speak on behalf of your employer, but situations are different. And just keep in mind that when you're not there producing, it's costing the company money, which essentially costs everybody money. So there's got to be a balance struck. It's an economic problem to deal with. You got to give folks time off. They can't work every single day of the workday calendar. They've got to have some time off for vacation, and there's value in that, of course, when people get away from their workplace and relax and kind of refresh and re-energize. There's no doubt about that. I think that's all valid. But still, though, it just feels like we've got this kind of movement in this country where, the great resignation and all that kind of crap. So I read a report this morning, just thinking about it, where now employees are using fake offers from other employers to negotiate higher pay with their existing employer. Not surprised, but that's becoming a trend. You know how that junk works, Rhino. It starts spreading around social media and TikTok, and the next thing everybody else is doing it. It develops into a trend. It starts to take root, take hold. It certainly feels like that to me. But friend Sharon and Brandon says the value of work has been diminished because we have now become focused on making sure your mental health, in quotes, is being taken care of. That's an excellent point there. Sharon, honestly, it's the same thing about two tied up in knots like a pretzel about words, and what did we report a couple of weeks ago, Rhino, in King County, where Seattle was located in Washington State, that you can't have Christmas decorations around your workplace because it might offend other people. And it's just junk like that. And it just makes me think, when the heck do we ever concern ourselves with actually working and producing value for society? Wow. Did I hear you correctly that the rail workers get 6 weeks vacation now with 1 sick day? That's from Donald in Oxford. That is our understanding, and Rhino evidently researched the same sources I did, which all seem to be the official credible sources. That is the case. So now they're going to get arguably 7 more days. That's what they're lobbying for, at least 7 more sick days. I mean, it's 2 months off before it's all over with. No, I'm not on board with that. That seems unreasonable. We have enjoyed our time here today for 100 years of Faith, Family, and Farm Bureau, the centennial celebration for Mississippi Farm Bureau. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.